Hi there, everyone. My name is Mrs. Bailey, and today we're going to be reading about Clara Barton. Now, some of you may know who Clara Barton is or have heard of Clara Barton. She started the American Red Cross, and that she absolutely did, but she also did a lot of other things as well, a lot of other amazing things, and we're going to find out about them in the book. Now, it says a pioneer for all. I am sure that you guys know what the word pioneer means. But it's not just about the people in the covered wagons going across America, settling new territories. There's more to that word, and Clara Barton was definitely a pioneer, and we're going to find out about that as well. Now, if you are not in a classroom setting, or if you do not have the worksheets sitting in front of you, I encourage you to go skip through this video and go to the very end. I have written a list of vocabulary words, a glossary of words, and just read through those very quickly before we start the book because it'll be like a refresher course for you on the words. I know that you know all of them, but maybe you've forgotten bits and pieces of them. And that way, when we run across them while we're reading, I won't have to stop and explain in depth so many things. So pause it and then come back. And now we're going to get started. I encourage you to follow along. I always like that. And if we get lost, or if you get lost, every now and then I will put my cursor down like this so you can find your place and follow along again. So let's get started. It says Clarissa Harlow Barton, also known as Clara Barton, was an extraordinary educator and humanitarian and one of the most honored women in American history. Not only did she fight for the rights of women in the workplace and risk her life providing support to the soldiers during the American Civil War, she also founded the American Red Cross, an institution that gives help and hope to those in need across the nation and around the world. And in the back, in that glossary that I was telling you guys to look at, it talks about humanitarian. That's someone who works for the welfare of others. Her accomplishments and legacy certainly didn't come easy, though, as her younger years were riddled with varied struggles. So she had a lot of hard times when she was young. Clara was born on December 25th, 1821 in North Oxford, Massachusetts, to Stephen and Sarah Barton, and she was the youngest of 5 children. She was especially close to her brother David, who was very protective of his younger sister. He even tried shielding Clara from Dolly's, their other sister, aggressive behavior toward her concerning her inability to speak correctly. You see, Clara had a stutter and was unable to speak in a fluid manner. So this word stutter, that's in the glossary as well. And it's just when all of us stutter at some point in time. I stutter at some point in time. I will during this book probably. But it's just when somebody says a word and they may repeat the first letter of that word, usually if it's a consonant, like, I am going to the pond. They may say that P sound over again. And we all have something. So the fact that Clara had a stutter isn't really that big of a deal, but it is to the person that has it when they have it. I have something, my sons have something, my husband, everybody has something that they're self-conscious about. Hers just happened to be a stutter. Dolly wasn't purposefully mean to Clara. She simply thought that Clara was too lazy to try to talk correctly. She insisted that Clara go to school, but while there, Clara was laughed at because of her stutter. Though Clara was very intelligent, the constant mockery caused Clara to become even more shy than she already was, and because of her shyness, she only had one friend in addition to her brother David, or Davy, as she liked to call him. So, when we make fun of people over something that they can't help, it is going to cause them to be very self-conscious. It's probably happened to you if somebody has made fun of something little. Somebody's made fun of your shoes. Chances are you may be a little self-conscious to wear them next time. That's crazy. Wear them. You like them? Wear them. You should never make fun of folks. When Clara was still quite young, at age 11, Davy was in a terrible accident. He fell from the rafters in their barn, and doctors didn't expect him to live. This devastated Clara, but she was determined to care for him and help him get better. Clara was used to the role of caregiver, as she had always had a special connection to the animals on the farm and would look after them when they were sick. This greatly helped in her caring for Davy. So if this right here is the barn, the rafters would be way up high here because they're the beams that help hold the roof on. So if Davy fell from one of these rafters all the way to the ground, that would definitely hurt. For 2 years, Clara took care of Davy and helped nurse him back to health. It was during this time that she truly realized her passion for caring for things. But despite her accomplishment of helping Davy overcome his illness, Clara was still very shy. So she gained some self-confidence by helping her brother get well, but it didn't overcome her shyness because of her stutter. Her family thought she should face her fear and encouraged her to become a teacher. So, while still a teenager, Clara began her teaching career. Now, why do you think becoming a teacher would help her overcome her fear or overcome her shyness? Maybe because she's stepping outside of her comfort zone and she's doing something different. She's standing in front of kids, teaching. She's got to be talking to them. So I can see where that might help. There's other reasons too. I mean, she has to interview for the job. She has to talk to adults as well as just to teachers. As well as just to students. Although she had no formal training, she was very adept at teaching. That means she was very good at it. And schools sought her out to hire her. When she found out that schools didn't pay their women and men teachers equal pay, she declined the offers, until eventually they agreed to pay the higher wage to women teachers as well. She was considered a pioneer for women teachers. That's where the word pioneer comes in, and if you read your glossary, you know what it means. It's just someone who is the first to do something, or people who are the first to do something. She may not have been the very first woman to ask for higher wages, but she is one of the first women to ask for equal pay for men and women, and it paid off. In the 19th century, most American students attended a one-room schoolhouse. One teacher would usually have students in the 1st through 8th grades. She or he could have anywhere from 5 students to over 40 students. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine being in the classroom with 6-year-olds as well as 13-year-olds and everybody in between? How in the world is that teacher going to be able to teach you all? A 6-year-old is learning how to read. A 12-year-old already knows how to read. They're learning how to write really well. That's got to be pretty tough. After teaching for 11 years, Clara chose to continue her education by going to college. She went to the Liberal Institute in Clinton, New York, as it was one of the only higher education schools open to women. After graduating, she saw the need to teach poorer children in free public schools, where at this time were few and far between. Free public schools, that's just all of us, guys. Everybody goes to public school. Not everybody. Some people go to private school, but public schools are the main thing that everybody goes to. However, she did indeed begin teaching children in New Jersey, even though the local school board thought it would never work. They considered these children to be unteachable. Clara proved them wrong and succeeded with her teaching endeavor. So I don't know why they would think these children were unteachable, because just like we just said, this is virtually everyone. This is just normal, regular children. And over here, it's got a big sign that says Clara Barton School, one of the earliest free schools of New Jersey, established 1852 by Clara Barton, founder of the American Red Cross. This sign still stands in front of this school, which was the school that Clara taught at. And I'm sure it's had a few renovations, but it's still there for people to visit. And then it says, in fact, Clara was so successful, she was replaced with a male principal. Remember, men were regarded as more valuable than women in the workplace. Therefore, Clara was replaced by a man, even though she was the one who created the position. So there again, it seems like she may be having to fight for something. After this hiccup in her career, Clara began working at the U.S. Patent Office in Washington, D.C., making her one of the first women to work for the federal government. While there, she and the other women were treated so unfairly that it eventually resulted in all the women at the Patent Office being fired, simply due to the fact they were women. So it's happening again, it seems, with her. This word right here, patent, do you know what that is? That is, if you have created something, if you have an invention, and you don't want anyone else to steal your idea or your creation, you can apply for a patent, and if granted, no one else can take your invention. They can't steal your idea. Clara fought to get her job back and for the equal treatment of women in the workplace. She fought so hard that her voice was eventually heard by President Lincoln, who agreed with her sentiment. And that word sentiment is back there in the back. So is President Lincoln. But sentiment just means it's an attitude or an idea about a particular idea or topic. In 1861, when the Civil War began, Clara quit her job at the Patent Office in order to help get medical supplies and food to the wounded Union soldiers in the Washington military hospitals. At the time, the priority was supplying weapons to the military rather than helping the wounded. Clara also began to realize that there was a significant need for supplies on the front lines in the war, so she organized a way for them to get the necessities they needed. She was often seen on the battlefield helping both Union and Confederate soldiers, so the North and the South, black and white, as she saw all people equal. It was during this time that she was penned Angel of the Battlefield. I think that title is fitting because she was on the warfield, the battlefield, and she was acting as an angel to all of these people. She was helping them out, and that's what I think of when I think of an angel. Clara not only personally helped give aid to the soldiers, but she also helped establish some basic hygiene procedures for the doctors to follow in order to help alleviate infection in soldiers. So basic hygiene procedures, that's just stuff like washing your hands, brushing your teeth. That's basic hygiene for us. She had noticed that many doctors didn't wash their hands or sterilize their equipment before performing surgery, so she put in place a course of action where this became standard procedure. Since there were no formal nursing degrees offered during this time, Clara was a self-taught nurse. So can you imagine that there was ever a time that doctors would not wash their hands before seeing a patient or clean their equipment before doing surgery? I am sure that when you go to the doctor's office that your doctor washes their hands before they see you, and they wash their hands after they see you and go to the next patient so they don't spread the germs from person to person. This could absolutely cut down on infections, which would help with deaths. In 1865, after the war was over, President Lincoln presented Clara with the enormous task of finding missing or dead soldiers. During the next 4 years, Clara was able to find over 22,000 missing soldiers. Most of them had perished in battle, but some were found and reunited with their families. Today, the Clara Barton Missing Soldiers Office Museum in Washington, D.C. is open to the public on weekends, should you ever want to visit. So that's a huge task, finding missing soldiers, because you would have to find friends of friends who knew what happened to the soldiers. You'd have to talk to the families. That's a huge task, guys. So the fact that she found 22,000 missing soldiers is huge. By 1869, Clara was exhausted, and upon the advice of her doctor, she took a well-needed vacation to Europe, where she learned of the International Red Cross in Geneva, Switzerland. This was a humanitarian organization that helped people wounded in war, and it sparked an idea in Clara to form the future American Red Cross. After coming back to America and gaining political support, the American Red Cross was formed in 1881. So this right here is the International Red Cross in Geneva, Switzerland. So even while she was on vacation, she managed to somehow find a way to work, didn't she? Always trying to better people and their situations. The American Red Cross not only provides assistance during wartime, but rather with any disaster relief, including hurricane relief, flood relief, fire relief, and much more. I'm sure you've all seen the buses at some point driving down the highway. Some of you may have even had your parents or an adult that you know give blood on those big bloodmobile buses that they have. I see those all the time. My husband gives blood a lot. The Red Cross provides assistance with disasters by offering supplies, food and water, healthcare, sanitation services, and reconnecting families. They do a lot more, just like they do a lot more with different disaster relief. But this is just some of the major things. And over here, we have a picture of the American Red Cross in Washington, D.C. And down here, we have a couple of those mentioned over here on this side of the disasters that the American Red Cross may go to. This looks like fires. I know that there's been a lot of fires out west. This is probably after a hurricane or a tornado. This is the headlines for Hurricane Katrina when it hit in New Orleans. And they do all kinds of things, floods, war, anything. Clara Barton's story doesn't end there, though. She is also the reason you have a first aid kit in your classroom, or home, or just about anywhere else. She established the National First Aid Association of America in 1905, which made first aid kits for us to use in case of emergencies. So in your classroom, I bet your teacher has a first aid kit. You probably have one at home. I have one at home. I had one in my classroom. I have one in my car. I put one in my kids' cars. It's just those emergency supplies that you may need quickly. You hurt your finger, you cut it, you may need an antibiotic ointment and a Band-Aid. You can find that in your first aid kit. So she is the reason we have those. Clara Barton's contribution to this world is significant. Her legacy profound, and it all started with one little girl who was made fun of because of her stuttering. Clara is proof that one person truly can make change. So she had a lot of struggles all her life, starting with her stuttering, but she managed to overcome them. I hope you can do that too. And right here is that glossary that I had originally told you guys to come take a look at before reading the book. That way I didn't have to explain everything, such as the American Civil War, Union soldiers, Confederate soldiers. The Union soldiers are the soldiers from the northern states. The Confederate soldiers are the soldiers from the southern states. So look at this again, if you didn't already, so you know exactly what those words mean. I thank you for tuning in, and I hope you have a great rest of the day. I thank you for reading this book with me. Bye-bye.